All right, thanks a lot for joining, Peter. For everyone who is joining right now, we are here today with Peter Loving. Do I pronounce your name correctly, by the way?
Yeah, Loving. Yeah.
Loving. All right. So let me introduce Peter a little. Peter is from UK, and he runs like extremely successful Facebook group SaaS Founders and Execs, which is short for executives. And he also helps other SaaS founders to design and create better products. Is that right? Did I introduce you correctly?
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
All right.
Generally, I come from a product background, so I've been a product designer for about 13, 14 years, and I generally consult as well. So I consult with SaaS companies around their product and provide design services as well, UI and UX. So it's kind of generally product consulting.
So when you say that you are a product designer, you don't do like the final graphic design. You do just the UI and UX, or can you tell me a little bit more about how does your work look like exactly?
Yeah. I'll explain a typical process. So, and I've worked through the whole range of product design related roles and work. So, typically, UX design involves the designing the experience, right? The user experience. But in order to do that, you want to get a good idea of the architecture, the user journeys, the items and the interactions that you have on certain views of pages, for example. And the way that you design this is generally speaking with users, getting information and data from users about the problems they have, the task that they'd like to perform within an application, and feedback from them on how they'd like to do it, and any any tests on particular products that they're using. And then the way to actually design for user experience is to create mock-ups and prototypes, wireframes, wireflows, anything from sketching all the way through to a fully working prototype that represents the way a product works, but it doesn't necessarily. But it's not actually a finished product.
Okay.
So for instance, to do that, we use something called Axure, and Axure allows you to create interactive wireframe prototypes. So it's like a really cool interactive, usable and functional prototype, really. And that's something that you can use for users to test and see how it works and get some feedback. So that's on a UX side. And UX, depending on where you are in the process, UX is usually the fundamental thing that comes first. So the way I see it is that UX is the core problem solving and functionality design process, and then UI is typically the aesthetic, how it looks, the interactions, how they respond, the space in a page, the layout, the way you represent the design. So if working on UI, for instance, I would be preparing design mock-ups of like very detailed interactions with for different screens with icons, typography, color schemes, and everything like this. So that's more the kind of visual and final finessing of a product.
That's a pretty interesting topic. I think that a lot of people who are already watching will be really interested in this. And before we dive a little bit deeper into it, let me just repeat for people who are joining right now that we are here with Peter Loving from UK, who is a designer of successful SaaS products and a founder of a group SaaS Founders and Execs. So let me tell you a little bit more about how did you actually got into this space, because there are a lot of graphic designers and a lot of people who are saying that they are UX designers as well. But from my personal experience, there are not many of them are good. So how did you get into this space, and how did you create your personal brand as someone who builds products?
Yeah, well, I've always been really fascinated by products and how they're designed and how they work. Also to a lesser degree, but still I'm super interested in it, is how they are marketed and the sales process as well. So everything that goes into that. But I was, funnily enough, like I remember being very young and designing products and designing trainers specifically, like from a super early age in like primary school with friends. We used to had a friend that we used to do product design together before we had a clue what we were doing. We were sketching out designs for Nike trainers, right? And then through school, I was always interested in design, but mixed with science. And then when I got to university, by that time, I'd identified product design as like the thing that was like, that matched all of the skills and my interests that I had. So I studied product design in university, and that degree was more, to be honest, it was more focused around industrial product design. So designing gadgets, consumer gadgets, anything like an iPhone or a kind of smart watch or a lighting for the home or a TV remote control. And when I finished my degree, this is like 15 years ago now, at that time had just started. It just became like a new thing that was exciting, and friends of mine were all starting to use it. So the web was a really interesting place. Obviously YouTube and other social platforms, and LinkedIn was already really big. And so I decided to transition my product design skills to the web. And what I found at that time is actually there's a lot of the same principles and a lot of the same skills and techniques that are used, and even processes for designing products. But then with the web, you need to have some more technical know-how about how development works and how developers would build a design that you create. So you have to understand front end, especially like typically markup, HTML and CSS. You really need to also understand the fundamentals of programming. So I got familiar with PHP and jQuery, and I learned front end development to complement my design skill set. So then from then on, I was freelancing. So I'm one of these people who has never quite fitted into an internal big company role. So
Peter, before we jump into this topic, I actually want to separate the interesting thing you said, that you went to product designing university, and they were teaching you how to do physical products, right? Like iPhones and so on. Why did you choose to go to web? Like, isn't it more fun to build products you can actually touch?
Yeah. No, it was really cool, because at that time, at Apple, Jonathan Ive was like the lead product designer at Apple. So he was one of the kind of people that inspired lots of, me and friends while we were at university. And that is what I wanted to do at that time. I wanted to go into 3D product design. But during the degree, I also got really interested in the web. So I had these two interests, and then when I finished, I found that lots of the jobs for product designers were based in Asia, or kind of in remote. I wouldn't necessarily say completely remote, but in places in Europe that might, like, away from the city. So lots of research and development facilities are not based like in the center of a busy European city. They're usually away from the city, where it's slightly cheaper to run design and engineering teams. And so when I finished, I did have some offers to go and either do internships or take a job, but they were like, one was in Germany, one was in the countryside. And I'm from London, so I wanted to stay in London at that time. And so I thought, okay, how am I going to do, stay in London, my hometown I love, and also work in product design, and that's where my interest in the web came in.
All right, so that's an interesting story. Can you please explain a little bit more about the freelancing, where I stopped you a few minutes ago.
Yeah.
So if somebody really doesn't fit into classic work environment, I think you want to say something about this, right?
Yeah. So, and a lot of SaaS founders are like this too, because they're kind of either people that are very creative, or they like building things, or they're entrepreneurial. So sometimes that kind of person, everybody's different. So sometimes that kind of person fits really well into a corporate job, and sometimes they don't. And for me, I was really interested in building a kind of creating a design studio or an agency. So one route to do that is to spend a lot of time freelancing and building up clients. So I did that, and I eventually built up a lot of freelancing clients and started an agency. So that was Front Digital, which we were talking about a bit earlier. And Front Digital was the agency that came from my years of freelancing that grew. And I started hiring designers, and I hired developers too, and we had a team. So at that time, we had some SaaS clients. And so that's how I really kind of, I wouldn't say when I first started freelancing, I wasn't necessarily focused on SaaS. It was just on web design. So then I moved more and more towards product, because that's the thing I love. And so the agency, with that, we had some SaaS customers. So that's where work for me got really interesting.
Do you think it was a good transition to go one layer deep, because you were just web designing, or UX web design, and you decided that you will go one layer deep into SaaS and to niche down? Do you think it was one of the best decisions you did in your business? Because for me personally, when I do something really broad, it's quite difficult to target it properly, and Word actually explain exactly what you're doing, right? Because you are talking to masses, you are not talking to one exact person, such as SaaS founder. Was it a good decision for you as well?
Yeah, it's a really good decision. I would say most of all because it's the one that is the most engaging and interesting for me to work with, right? So I love being able to work with the companies that I find the most interesting, that they have the most interesting problems. They're building something much more technical than just a website. So there's a lot more problems, a lot more UX and UI problems that they have to work on. So it was really great from that perspective. Now, I would also say that sometimes that decision I think the most important decision to make is the one where your passion is and where you're going to be most enthusiastic with your work. So before that, I'd also had some clients in politics and some clients in PR, and for an agency, they were much more profitable clients than some of that we've had. I'm not saying we didn't have very profitable SaaS ones too, but so the decision was good for me from a passionate perspective. But that was the most important, and then for like a financial business decision, I would probably be making more money in another industry.
But you didn't feel it in your guts that it's something you can breathe for.
Yeah, completely. So I'm in the place that I love, which is the most important thing.
To believe the intuition and your guts, that's really important. Anyway, so you love SaaS, and at which point you exactly decided that you will start building your own Facebook group?
It's been fairly slow and organic. So I've had it probably for maybe over 2 years now. Okay. So maybe 2.5, maybe 2.5 years. And it's been, in the beginning, I wasn't very active with it, and it's become something that's more active now. There's more engagement. There are a lot of users. There are some really good SaaS founders in there. So the conversations are much higher quality. So it's been a good process that has.
All right. A lot of people are actually watching right now and will be watching in the replay. You're working with a lot of SaaS founders and product designers, marketers. What would you say that is the number one problem they all do, or most of them do, when it comes to building new products, and you are helping them with it?
Yeah. So there are there are a number of different problems, and obviously the problems founders have can be often quite specific to their team and their product. I find that more and more as I consult with founders, that SaaS companies have a general range of problems, but then when you get into the detail, they have their own very specific problems. So let's talk about the general ones. I would say for early stage teams, the general challenge is finding product market fit and finding a method for onboarding and finding customers that find value in the product and that are a good fit for the vision of the product and for where that company.
All right, let me stop right here. What do you think is the best process of finding a product market fit? Because like finding a product market fit should actually begin before you start building the product, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, for sure. So this is people come about it in different ways. The best way, in my opinion, to do it is to start with identifying a problem that a certain demographic of people have, okay? And you can start serving those people and trying to help them solve their problem. It doesn't necessarily need to be a product in the beginning. So a very common beginning for a SaaS company is actually to be a service-based business or an agency, because these companies find common challenges and common problems with a certain customer base. So one good way to find product market fit is by providing a service. And then when you start developing that service, you look at ways to productize the service, and then you look at ways to turn that productized service into a product that delivers value. So those steps can be quite challenging, but there's a definite process there. It involves changing your business model and it involves pivoting, but it can work, and then it can become something really scalable. And you've proven the most challenging part in the beginning, which is the product market fit. Now.
All right. So product market fit. Like I heard it actually from my experience as well, that finding a product market fit like on the first try is almost impossible, right? And there are a lot of iterations that are needed to be done to actually find the product market fit. Let me plug a little story from I just recalled from the founders of the Twitch. Do you know Twitch streaming platform?
Yeah.
And do you know the story behind it? Because it's quite fun.
Someone might have told me, but I can't remember. They basically started as a Justin TV, and it was the most stupid idea. Like even they are saying it now, and they were saying it before, but they went for it. And it was about that you would wear a device that would just stream 24/7 your life. And the first one who tried it was a founder, and he was called Justin. And then they found that nobody wants to use it, nobody wants to buy it. But they figure out that people are more interested in watching other people play video games while they were using the device there on them. So that's how they actually pivoted and begin finding a right product market fit, right? So what would you say that when it comes to product market fit, is the right process to iterate and to just test new things to find if it really clicks? Yeah, that's a really cool story. And I'd say, for product companies like that, it's quite rare to have that kind of story, and to become such a huge company like have that explosive growth. But they've taken that other model that I was going to talk about, which is you have an idea or a concept, and then you're building a solution for it, and then you have a product, and then you're doing research and you're looking at how to fit this product or idea to a certain application to get that fit. Okay, so that's another way if you're not starting with a service. And this can be quite labor intensive, because each time you want to build, each time you want to test, you are either adapting your product or you're changing the audience and trying to present it to a new audience. So the best way to do this is in small incremental steps that, that give the minimum amount of resource required for a development team to actually, start programming or changing things or adding different features. But really, the one of the best things you can do here is a lot of customer interviews and a lot of customer research, and getting feedback from potential audiences. Now that's also kind of a difficult process too, because you don't always get feedback that gives you direct information that really would work. Yeah. Sometimes, you get feedback. People don't say what they say and what they do are different things. It's a very common expression within customer research. So you need to kind of be diligent with the way you do it, and then also introduce tests in that. So perhaps you'd want to do rapid prototyping and screen share a rapid prototype and record how a user interacts with it, and use methods like that reduce the amount of development requirement, but let you get the learning outcomes as easily as possible.
Yeah, it's a quite difficult to pick what you should focus on when it comes to changing your product. If you should change like the product features, or you should just change the messaging towards the audience, right? Because you can have the best product and you're just presenting it to a wrong audience, right? Or your product is just wrong. It's shit, and you just need to completely rebuild it. All right, that's interesting. So that's a number one problem when it comes to UX and the SaaS businesses. Are there any other problems you recall?
Yeah, so that's a problem with product market fit. I wouldn't necessarily say that's a UX problem, but there are I see a problem being also with the resource. Okay, like this is probably the biggest common problem, besides having paying customers, is the resource required to build a product-based company and grow that company to a place where it's revenue positive, right? Shall we say? And that's because if you think about it, a product business is something that requires an intense amount of capital and resource to build something that provides value, and you have to invest all of that time, effort, and resource before you get to a point where the value that is delivered by the product far outweighs the price or the cost that someone's willing to pay. So the biggest challenge is finding capital, like revenue or investment, and also the resource of actual team members. So having the right talent in the team, finding that talent, being able to attract the talent, when there's probably little capital in the company. So finding the right co-founders. These are very common early challenges as well. And even when companies scale, it's difficult to have the right talent and the capital to keep investing in growing and building more value into the product.
Do you assist in these later stages of the product building, or are you more when the product is starting and you're hired as a consultant and a designer?
I've worked at both. I've worked at both stages. So I've designed products from the first UI that they've ever had after they have the concept of the product, and I've also redesigned the UI of a £10 million SaaS business from the UK. So these are very different challenges, because for the earlier teams, it's very easy to design UI quickly, but it always gets difficult when you're committing that UI to the development, and you also want to execute it in the best way so that you don't have problems like usability issues, and that you have high quality, the kind of UI that stays with the product that gives it some longevity, so that investment in the UI has a long lifespan.
All right. It all comes back to having the right people on board and working with the right people.
Yeah, but for I was just going to touch on that point of like a much later stage SaaS company. They have a big challenge with technical debt. So if you're designing and making product improvements on a big product, you have to be really careful about deciding which area to work on, prioritizing it, the scope of the design, and the implications of that design for the development team and for users. So you're working in a bigger framework. You have a detailed roadmap. You have product managers, product owner, and a design team. So the decisions are taken and with much more to consider in that kind of view. And those are the differences. You can't move so quickly. And you can't just redesign the whole application. On one application we redesigned, it took a year to do the UI. We'll do one section, one area of the functionality, and then the development team would have that ready like 2 or 3 months later. So decisions get more important, and more involved.
But now you're talking about more later stages companies, but the young companies what are just starting out, they have the advantage that they can iterate quickly and they can do things like really quickly because they are not big yet. But what I see really often that these companies don't choose the right co-founders from the start, and there are maybe 2 business guys or 2 marketing guys or 3. Or just two technical guys, exceptional developers, but they don't know how to think about their customers and about marketing. What would you say that is the ideal team when you're starting to build a new product?
Yeah, I think the ideal team is a engineer, a really talented engineer with the right kind of experience, the right stack to develop for the product or application that you're trying to build. So someone who will stay, is really committed, not a developer that has other projects, not someone who can only give a small amount of time, someone who can really commit and is really experienced, who can lead a development team once you get going. Then a product person, and then a strong salesperson. That would be like the ideal scenario for me. So I think the strongest teams are often like 3 or 4 co-founders. Obviously, equity is split much more, but if you have 4 talented people who gel really well together, you will have an incredibly talented team in a strong position. So if you have 4, you'd have a developer, a product person, a sales or marketing person, and then for a 4th one, I'll probably add a financial,
some sort of COO or
COO or CFO. You don't really need a CFO from the beginning, but it once you scale and things get really start to grow, then that role becomes super important. And the beauty of having this kind of structure for co-founders is that everybody thinks very differently, has different talents, and brings a different perspective to the team. So decision making, problem solving, and the places you can go open up to a whole new kind of range of direction that's more likely to put you on the track of success, rather than if you had like 2 developers or 2 designers or
You mentioned that these people should be able to work on the product full time, don't have any other projects on the side. I would just add that it's really not difficult, but it's really important to have at least 1 year of cash sitting in a bank, so you can survive without investment, and you can just fully focus on a product. Because running out of money is actually killed a lot of startups.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest one. It's like the time that it takes you to start generating revenue. Because either you run out of money and it means that you haven't quite gotten to the place where you're making revenue yet. So it's difficult for you to fundraise because nobody will necessarily invest in you at that point. So at least if you get to a point where you're generating revenue, then it's easier to gain investments, whether you're a kind of seed stage or an angel stage. You already want to be able to demonstrate traction and a really promising business model.
When do you think is the right time for a company to start monetizing their product? Because do you think it's from the very start they should start charging people?
Yeah, my point of view, it depends on your use case. So for your product and your audience, everybody has a unique kind of offering, audience and product and team. So it does vary, but generally the principle that I like to follow is to sell from the very beginning, because really the lifeblood of business is sales, right? So if a company is selling even before they have a product, they are finding their route to market and they're learning so much from the audience or the target customers that they're going after. And this insight gives you the ability and the confidence to know that when you encounter problems, you'll find ways to resolve them and find a route to market through selling. And I like the idea of being able to sell a product before it exists.
Yes.
And in fact, I met one guy. He was a guy who gave a talk once, and him and I got talking over a few months, and we stayed in touch. But he basically bootstrapped I'd call it a micro SaaS product. But basically for him, it was generating his livelihood, his income to live, and he went and found a target audience, and he basically pitched them a product, and they gave him some feedback to the point where they said that he had an idea that they would pay for. So he pitched to 40 potential customers, and 10 of them said that they'd pay him up front for the product before he built it. So he generated, it wasn't a great deal. It was around 100K probably, just from 10 customers. And it gave him the money to build the product. Obviously he had contracts with all of them, and then
just delivered.
He delivered, but that was such a brilliant way to start. Because then it started by customer research and selling. So it's a really strong position to be in. If you can do that from day one, it guides your product.
People saying that, I will buy your product doesn't necessarily mean that they will just take out their credit card and buy your product, right? I actually like the validation with pre-orders, and I heard a story as well, that they took it even a little bit more back, even before charging people and even before actually any idea. And they just went to target market they wanted to serve, and they asked them, hey, what's your biggest challenge with X? Right? So it's a very open-ended question, and they got a lot of answers and different answers. So from 100 different answers, they were able to come up with a product that would serve perfectly to this audience, right? And they know what words to use, what messaging, because they just told them, So and then they were able to get pre-orders as well.
Yeah, I mean it's a really good approach. I prefer the approach of building up a relationship and getting to know a customer or a potential customer on a fairly intimate basis at that early stage. And I see a lot of people asking that question now, what's your biggest challenge with X? And they post it a lot in Facebook groups as well. But and it doesn't get a lot of engagement because it's so broad, and I think people generally know what what they're trying to do. They're developing a product or service. But if you can get on a more of a personal level, conversations, some calls, and you can record them, have a screencast and a screen call and record it, and get data and build a relationship, then you're in a really super strong position, I think. Super strong. Yeah, I like that approach. For me, that's a really strong approach for the early days.
Yeah. All right, so let's move a little bit further. So let's say that we have already some paying customers in our product. When would you say that it's the best time to start scaling, and at which point would you wait a little longer?
So it depends on how they're using the product and the engagement that you have. I'd want to see a core user base that are using it for common reasons, and they're all getting similar value out of the product.
Okay.
And also that I'd like to get an understanding of the lifetime value of customers and the cost of acquisition. So if you find that you're managing to get customers on board and they start to use the product a little bit, but they don't last and they churn fairly soon, that would be my next step to focus on. And I'd be doing, once again, some customer research, interviews, and some direct message kind of chats to try and understand what those problems are, using things like Full Story and Hotjar to observe and gain analytics on user behavior. So I want to get the CAC to a point where it is three. This is a general principle that they say lifetime value should be 3 times the cost of customer acquisition.
Yeah.
Right. So if you get it to that point, that means you have, relatively speaking, a fairly good retention within the product. I'd look at ways to increase that, look at the core value, and look at the market that you could really focus in on. And then you're probably in a good position to consider scaling. But also, in order to scale, you really, once again, you're at that position where capital is a challenge. So that tends to be around the stage where angel funding or a round of angel funding comes in to try and get you that.
We have a question here from the similar space, and Joseph is asking, what is the best practice for a SaaS startup to go from no capital to residual sales using a lifetime deal wholesaler like PitchGround, for example, or initial capital? And follow-up question, what should the agreement contain and what should it not contain? So the first question, how to go from no capital to residual sales using lifetime deals.
Yeah, so in order to have a lifetime deal, you need to have the basis of a product already.
That's true.
And I see some lifetime deals are fairly early stage ways to monetize a product. So if you don't have, let's take the example, the scenario where you don't have savings and you haven't got a year of buffer time, then you're in a position where you have to work to pay for your living, and you either are working on building a product in your spare time, evenings and weekends. And I definitely wouldn't recommend people do this on their own, because that time you're tired from work, even if you're motivated, can be quite challenging to be efficient and get things done. And it's quite isolating if you're working a day job and then you're also trying to. So I just actually wouldn't really recommend it unless you're super driven and you know that you'll have a break where you can recharge after a while. So this is why I sometimes talk about the service model of actually selling and delivering a service before you build a product. And if you can deliver a service, even if that's manually, then you're generating some revenue that you can actually live on. And this is for people who are in that scenario. And once you're doing that, you can then start setting aside some time to build a product where you get it to the point that you might be able to get an early cohort of users, and then you can build a kind of roadmap towards doing a lifetime deal. If you do have a buffer of money or savings for 6 months to a year, then I would really go all in on looking for the problem that you want to solve and doing what we were speaking about, the finding potential customers and interviewing them. Now, in my opinion, that is kind of like a sales job. It's like you're prospecting, because you're reaching out to people, you're asking them if they'll give you some of their time to interview them and gain insight. So once again, the closer you are to selling as an early stage product company, I think it puts you in the best situation, and then build up to a lifetime deal. But common ways for finding customers now. In the early days, I wouldn't say it's like content marketing, because that's too resource intensive, and it takes a long time to get customers from that. I'd be focusing on outreach, and if you have the budget to be doing some advertising, but only once you've built a funnel that people will convert with. So I'd be doing kind of like outbound prospecting through LinkedIn. And or Facebook if your audience are active there, and then I would be also looking at ways. I would look at building a funnel that converts, testing conversions. Start with a landing page, and then try and scale that with ads or webinars. I mean that's your common model now. And then if you get to a point where you get some customers and you feel like you have the potential to gain traction, then you might be in the right kind of situation to consider an LTD. Yeah. Do you think that covers the question?
I think kinda, but I think the question was more about from no residual sales, from no capital to residual sales using an LTD, right?
Using an LTD.
Yeah.
Oh, right. So, okay. Well, in my opinion, I don't think I would do an LTD when I have no residual sales. I just don't think I'd do it, because I know companies do, but I'd like to onboard users where I feel like I have a sense of the value, and I have a feel of the sense that I can sell the product, right? Because if you can't LTD, you might onboard loads of different customers, and utilization will be super weak. They might not get value from the product. So I'll try and put it off.
All sort of comes back to, if you know your market, and if you sort of found the product market fit, then you might consider LTD, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to quite a few companies that have done them, and I lay it on. So they had their product that's been working for ages. They had I think they had 90,000 users, and they did a lifetime deal. They went with AppSumo, and they raised 80K in sales from that. So it was a good injection of capital for them, gave them a bit more runway, and they know the value of their product, and they already know that people will pay to use it. So the LTD for them it's in a much stronger situation there. I think it's easier to sell as an LTD as well, because people can see,
that it's working.
But if I didn't have sales, and I went into an LTD, I'd be really concerned about finding out what customers will stick. And if they're going to be a good fit longer term. Because then you're going to gear, that's a decision that you're going to gear up your whole company and your product towards catering to that type of customer. So if they're, if you get it wrong, it can cost you a lot of time and time and money. That could be a potential route to a reason to fail. So I'll be careful about it.
All right. Thanks a lot. I think it was a great answer, and we are already live for 40 minutes, and it's almost time to wrap it up. And I'd like to ask you, because like in the end of the all live sessions we have, we give our guests opportunity to pitch their product if they are SaaS founders, or their Facebook community to our community here at PitchGround. So I will give you just 90 seconds, and if you want,
cool.
you can pitch SaaS executives and founders. So ready when you're ready.
Yeah. So generally, what I help SaaS companies improve their product so that they can get more users, increase utilization, build value, and also increase their pricing. So it helps them to hone in on their ideal customer in the market by building a better quality product. That's what my consulting does, and I'm currently launching a service called the UI Bootcamp. So if you'd like to hear more about how we do that on the UI Bootcamp, you can get in touch with me via my website, peterlovey.com.
You still have quite a lot of time. 50
seconds. Yeah. I don't think I'll need any more.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Brief, right?
Yeah, perfect. All right, Peter, it was awesome interview. Thanks a lot for sharing all these golden nuggets. And as I said, I'll just pick my favorite one. I will create a post and I will link people into your Facebook group. And yeah, thanks a lot again. And I hope that we'll stay in touch. Feel free to become an active member of the community, network with people.
I'm in the PitchGround group too. So I'm really enjoying seeing the developments there. It's really active as well. So it's a really nice group to be involved in too. So I'll be active in there as well.
Thank you very much.
Cool.
All right.
Well, thanks for the interview, Jacob. Thanks for the chat. I've enjoyed it.
All right. Me too. Thank you. Bye.
See you.